The following podcast is an exclusive presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Hey folks, Brian Keene here. You know, summer's over. We're entering the fall and then the winter. Halloween's coming up, Thanksgiving, and then of course the holiday shopping season. Speaking of the holiday shopping season, let me tell you about subculturecorsets.com. They've got everything you need for everyone on your list for this holiday season. Clothing, accessories, gifts, books, you name it, they've got it. They sponsor every show on the Project Entertainment Network, including this one. So please give them your business. Visit subculturecorsets.com.
Three Guys with Beards, the Project Entertainment Network store, featuring t-shirts, mugs, stickers, hoodies and more from your favorite Project Entertainment Network podcasts.
Ink Stain Scribbler's Rest.
The Horror Show with Brian Keene. Why not show your loyalty by wearing a cool product from the podcast group and show off to your friends?
It Cooks.
Armcast.
The Mondo Method Monster Attack.
Necrocastical. Go to projectentertainmentnetwork.com and click on the store tab for more details.
The Liars Club Podcast. Pizza.
The Lunch Ladies Book Club.
Matters of Faith.
The Project Entertainment Network store, stacked with stuff from the best podcasts on the internet. The Curtain Jerkers.
Buttercup of Doom.
www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
There shall come a podcast like no other. Defenders Dialogue with Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Marvel Comics' original superhero non-team convenes once again. The Incredible Hulk, the Savage Submariner, the Master of the Mystic Arts, Doctor Strange, and a dynamic supporting cast of Marvel superheroes battle against evil as the Defenders. Without further ado, true believers, here's your hosts, Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Excelsior!
Welcome back to Defenders Dialogue with Christopher Golden and Brian Keene. We think that's because we spent the last 10 minutes with Chris trying to find the record button on Skype.
It's recording.
It is recording.
Excelsior!
Excelsior, true believers. Welcome back to the show. This week we are, of course, talking about Defenders, issues 1 through 6. Now, that's the original run of the series from the 1970s. Chris, before we get to that, I just want to take a moment to mention, you're listening to this on the Project Entertainment Network. Another great show here on the Project Entertainment Network is the Necrocasticon. And that show is hosted by our very own engineer, Tommy Clark.
Yeah, Tom.
So when you're done listening to this, check out his show.
Yeah, I think people should be listening to people should just quit their jobs and do nothing but listen to the Project Entertainment. I can't even speak today. The Project Entertainment Network podcast, partly because, Brian, it is the only pleasure we have left now.
It really is.
The West Coast is on fire. The South and Southeast are flooded and destroyed and decimated. All the good pleasures in life are being taken away. But the Project Entertainment Network provides you with endless hours of geekery. That's right.
It's a loosely affiliated network of shows, sort of a non-team, if you will. And not even all of the hosts always get along, and yet they band together to provide you, the listener, with just endless hours of entertainment. So yeah, check them out, Project Entertainment Network.
Sometimes the hosts even call each other shambling behemoths and things like that. I don't know.
I have never called your Three Guys with Beards co-host Jim Moore a shambling behemoth.
Well, Jim has lost a ton of weight over the last 2 years.
I have called him a green-skinned monster. When I'm getting my Doctor Strange on, but
that's usually only when he's had one of Rich Dansky's staggering squirrels. Then he's not shambling. That's
a spoiler for this week's show. There's something that jumped out at me. I'm not going to mention it yet. I want to see if it caught your attention as well.
All right.
In these rereads.
Well, before we go into Defenders 1 through 6, I want to return to yesteryear of last week's show, and talk about the real origin of the Defenders, which we talked about it last week. But because you brought it up, I had only read about it in Roy Thomas's introduction to Marvel Masterworks Defenders Volume 1.
Right.
Those 3 single issues in which the germ of the Defenders, the seed, was planted, which was Doctor Strange 183 of the original run, Submariner 22, and the Incredible Hulk 126.
Right.
And I read them this morning, and they're really not good. The Doctor Strange issue looks beautiful because it's drawn by Gene Colan, but the 3 issues are really not good, and I think it was appropriate to leave them out of the. By the way, they're collected in Marvel Masterworks Doctor Strange Volume 4. All 3 of those issues are in there.
Okay.
And in fact, for those who are keeping score here, Marvel Feature number 1, which was the actual launch of the Defenders, originally had a backup story, also written by Roy Thomas, which showed how Doctor Strange went from being the masked Doctor Strange to the no longer masked Doctor Strange that we meet in Marvel Feature number 1.
Right. A lot of younger listeners probably don't realize that. At one point, Doctor Strange wore a mask just like every other superhero.
Yeah, it was a short period where he was masked. He looked sort of silly, but there was that short period where he had a mask. And right before Marvel Feature 1, they decided we don't want him in the mask when we go into the Defenders. So there's a backup that basically crosses that. Once upon a time, continuity meant something. And so they have this backup story that shows how Doctor Strange is unmasked. And it turns out that Baron Mordo was masquerading as the masked Doctor Strange. It's all very complex. But weirdly, that story is not, even though it was in Marvel Feature number 1, it's not included in Marvel Masterworks Defenders Volume 1, but it is included in Doctor Strange Marvel Masterworks Volume 4, which includes these 3 stories that I'm talking about.
Right.
But suffice to say, I did read them. I'd read the Doctor Strange one years ago, but I had never read the Submariner or Hulk issues, and they're not good. And they're also only very tangentially related. It's like half of the Submariner issue and half of the Hulk issue each are recapping everything that's happened in those individual titles for the last 3 or 4 issues, and then Doctor Strange shows up and says, "Go beat up these Undying Ones," and they do, and Strange is in them hardly at all. Right. And that's the end. So they don't actually fight together. I think that's why that didn't show up in the collected Marvel Masterworks of the Defenders, because the 3 characters, Strange, Submariner, and Hulk, don't actually team up in those 3 issues that Roy Thomas cites as the real seed of the birth of the Defenders. So,
well, and I would agree with Roy Thomas, because as we're going to explore today, the seeds that were planted in those 3 random issues, certainly inform what we're going to talk about today. Exactly. But I would argue inform the entire series, especially in regards to Valkyrie.
Agreed.
Her. Well, I don't want to jump ahead of ourselves, but her origin was a mess up until, the 100 issues of Defenders, when Jam DeMatteis finally unfucked the whole thing.
I've always found unfucking to be an interesting concept, but
yeah.
But yeah. All right, so shall we dive in then, sir?
We should. We start with Defenders 1. Now, Sal Buscema, who we mentioned last week, he is still the artist on the book. He has a series of competent inkers that make his pencils just look fantastic. But Roy Thomas is no longer writing. Steve Englehart takes over as writer with issue number 1.
Yeah. And I think that the difference is noticeable immediately. All due respect to Roy, Steve was a younger guy.
Exactly.
And just reading some of Roy's stuff, Steve's stuff still reads, to anybody reading it now, it still reads as incredibly old-fashioned. It was written in the 70s. but it has a quote unquote hipper quality to it, and it's also funnier.
Yep.
And I don't know if it's intended to be funnier, but I just think I love the way Englehart wrote the Hulk in the Defenders.
Absolutely, I agree. Roy Thomas, you have to remember, he was brought in to help Stan Lee with his workload. He was the first person, other than arguably Jack Kirby, that was writing the Marvel Age of Comics, other than Stan. And Roy very much had a house style. His stuff was unique, but he was trying to mirror Stan. Steve Englehart, not so much. He brought a new flavor to it. And yeah, I agree. The way he writes the Hulk, starting with the opening scene in the book, we begin with Namor, the Submariner, just falling out of the sky,
right,
in front of Hulk, and it's a very sweet scene, and it's something we hadn't even really seen in the main Hulk book. Here's Hulk. He's worried about his friend, and he even comments he's never had a friend to be worried about before.
Right. Yeah. I mean, go ahead. Go ahead. I was just going to say that. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that. What's really interesting is it sets out to sort of do what we were talking about last week, which it actually sets Hulk to be, in many ways, the core of this family, right?
Yep.
And the non-team, is really this reluctant family. And so much of our pop culture now, especially on TV, is set up to be this non-nuclear family. The current trend in television series really started with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, with the found family element. And if you go back to Defenders, obviously it's not the first example, but it's a great example of this found family, this reluctant family. And Hulk really is the need to sort of keep the Hulk out of trouble is the thing that keeps the cranky parents from getting a divorce. You know what I mean?
It's absolutely true. An analogy occurred to me this week. I was binge watching this new comedy on Netflix called Atypical. If you haven't seen it, folks, check it out. I'm not usually one to recommend sitcoms. I'm not a sitcom guy, but this thing is so charming and so heartwarming and simultaneously heartbreaking. It's about this family raising an autistic teenager. And of course it's something that speaks to me personally. But in watching it and watching the dynamics, it's very similar to the Defenders in that Hulk is this troubled child. And you're right. So much of the book is about keeping him out of trouble,
right,
and keeping him happy. And he always draws them together, starting with this issue.
Exactly.
Namor falls out of the sky. He's hurt. Hulk wants to help his friend. The only thing he can think of is Doctor Strange. He thinks Doctor Strange is like a medical doctor, so he stomps off to ask Doctor Strange to help. And as we mentioned last week, these early issues, Doctor Strange is a dick.
Yeah, exactly.
It starts again right away. Hulk shows up asking for help. Does Doctor Strange call him Hulk or my friend or, Jolly Green Giant? No, he calls him Monster. Hulk's asking Doctor Strange what's going on. Doctor Strange refuses to explain anything to the Hulk.
Well, no, when Hulk says, and I'm going to go back in a second, but Hulk says, "What is happening?" Hulk does not understand. Doctor Strange says, "Nor need you, monster."
Yeah.
He's just like, "You're an idiot, so I don't need to tell you anything." I want to back up a second, though, because back to this Hulk discovering Namor, and then we'll move on. When he comes upon Namor, Namor is like in this glowing kind of force field, and he's unconscious or comatose. And Hulk says he sleeps. Hulk will wake him. Say hello. And then he realizes something's in the way. Something Hulk cannot see is in the way. So then there's a panel where Hulk yells, "Wake up, Namor! Hulk is here!" And Fishman does not move. Maybe he's hurt. I just like the childlike scene of "Wake up, Namor! Hulk is here" is just so great. But anyway, yes, I just love that.
And what I found especially charming about it, I laughed rereading it just like I did now when you were recapping it. But all throughout the Defenders run, younger listeners, like I'm going to mention comic journalist Gavin Dillinger. He's a millennial. I know he's listening to the show. He's actually reading along with us. But he's a young man in his 20s, so he's probably more familiar with the smart version of Hulk that exists. Well, and I guess that now it's Amadeus Cho, I believe. But Hulk, for the majority of his run, he didn't have the brain of Banner. He was this this dumb childlike creature. And one of the ongoing things in the Defenders, he had a nickname for everybody because he couldn't remember their names. So Namor, very early on, you see here, he becomes Fishman.
Yep.
Valkyrie, who we'll meet later on in this show, she becomes Sword Girl. Nighthawk, when he comes along later, he's Bird Nose. And that continued throughout the entire series.
Yep, exactly. Oh, well, and I think it'll be interesting. We'll have to pay attention, Brian, and figure out other nicknames that Hulk has for people as we go.
I know them all.
Is Doctor Strange Magic Man or something?
You know what? That's the one I can't remember.
We'll find as we go. We'll find. All right. So in any case, further to what we were discussing at the beginning, this issue, the first issue of the Defenders monthly comic, actually ties back into those three seedling issues that I was talking about. With the Nameless One and the Undying Ones and all of that stuff. And it actually recaps those three issues. Although, fortunately, because Englehart is a different writer, not for 7 pages. It's just one page recapping that. And we have Necrodamus, who is one of their servants, the servant of the Undying Ones, trying to use Namor for some kind of. Well, I can't remember now. I'm looking at. I read it for last week's show.
He wanted Namor to be a vessel for the Undying Ones.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, keep in mind the Undying Ones were a very thinly veiled H.P. Lovecraft reference. It was basically Marvel's attempt to create their version of the Cthulhu mythos. So for horror fans that are listening, basically they wanted their version of Cthulhu to possess the Submariner.
Right.
Which the Defenders stopped, but now he's back. And there's a good recap of all that. Do you want to talk about that?
I don't think we need to spend too much time with it because we talked about it a little bit. It's it's the Lovecraft thing.
Right.
I'm more interested actually in what happened. We can recap it if you want, but I'm more interested in actually what happens when Strange casts yet another spell of time stoppage to basically gain time because Namor is running out of time. So Doctor Strange stops time again,
right?
As he did in Marvel Feature and in the initial Defenders outing in Marvel Feature #1, and unwittingly, by doing so, weakens the time stoppage spell he had cast on Omegatron, which we talked about last week, which is the artificial intelligence, which is going to blow up literally the entire world's supply of nuclear weapons. So it's sort of like an artificial intelligence version of Kim Jong-un.
Right,
and
created
Donald Trump
by
put together.
Yandroth, the scientist supreme.
Yes, exactly. So Omegatron will speak Yandroth's name, and the whole world will explode in nuclear fire. But Doctor Strange had magically paused that. He hit the pause button, and now that has started to proceed again, only incredibly slowly. Still affected by Doctor Strange's magic, but slowed down remarkably. So that's just it's 4 small panels on a page, but that is set in motion by Strange's attempt to solve this issue's problem.
Right, because Doctor Strange just can't help but be a dick.
Exactly. Well, even by accident. And speaking of that, on the next page, Hulk has once again trying to help Namor, and Doctor Strange says, "Enough, Behemoth. Now is the time for my plan."
Well, and you know what I found interesting about that? This all comes down to Steve Englehart. The interplay in that scene between Hulk and Doctor Strange. Hulk finally starts to stand up for himself.
Right.
With Strange treating him like shit. But what's really interesting, the Hulk's go-to when he stands up for himself is to smash.
Right.
But he doesn't do that in this case. He actually tries to debate in his fashion.
Yes.
Doctor Strange. I thought that was a really neat touch that I've never seen anyone do.
Yeah. Speaking of that, even in previous adventures when these characters have met each other, he would get pissed and he would just leave. And for those of you who are as old as me and Brian, he was like Meadowlark Lemon in the old Harlem Globetrotters. He would just take his ball and go home.
Yeah.
And
you just dated us right there.
I know. Hey, dude, we're old. We're 50, So, but I like the fact that he says Hulk is tired of puny humans telling him what to do. Hulk does what Hulk wants.
Right.
So I thought that was good.
The other neat thing, my only other thought about issue 1, and again, it applies to the Hulk. There's a scene at the end of the issue where the Hulk gets injured by Necrodamus, and he reverts back to Bruce Banner. And again, it was a rarity. In the Hulk comic book, you might see Banner 2 or 3 pages per issue. But he didn't do much other than bemoan the fact that he was the Hulk. Here in the Defenders issue number 1, he reverts back to Banner. He wakes up. He sees Namor and Doctor Strange fighting Necrodamus. And what does Bruce Banner do? He jumps in. He gets physical. He leaps into the fray and helps him beat the shit out of this guy.
Yep. No, that was good. And also Doctor Strange, his magic is null and void for a moment. And Strange is using his physical, body, his ordinary human body to fight as well. So
right.
That was cool too. But yeah, let's in the interest of time, Defenders number 2 does something interesting. It's the search for the Silver Surfer, who Stan Lee had told Roy he couldn't use anymore. But somehow Englehart and Roy have convinced Stan to let the Silver Surfer reappear, at least momentarily. And I have to say, in a beautiful double-page spread illustrated by Sal Buscema, again, with John Verporten as the inker. It's the Arctic Circle or something, and the Silver Surfer grabs Namor out of the water or something. It's cool. I mean, it's gorgeous. This fight between the Surfer and Namor, because again they have to fight again for some reason, is beautiful.
It is. I agree with you. And, that's in my notes here. I brought up the fact that they had to fight again. I mean, this issue, this is where, as a reader, you really start to see the friendship developing between these characters. But it's almost a toxic relationship.
Yeah.
Surfer and Namor immediately fight. Later on in the issue, Hulk decides he doesn't want to be with Namor and Strange anymore because they're mean to him.
Yeah.
It's sort of toxic. The one thing that really stood out for me in this issue, as you said, they're in the Himalayas, and it's just a little bit of casual 70s racism that just it would never fly today. But Hulk grabs this Himalayan Sherpa guy and he says, "Stop, yellow skin."
Yes. Yeah, but again, this was the 70s and not... Yeah.
I would have never blinked reading that as a kid.
Right.
And it made me realize just how far the medium of comics have come and how far we've come as a culture that I stumbled over that line in a reread,
Yeah. It's also, I compare it to watching a lot of old Looney Tunes, which of course are from the 40s. But if you go back and look at those cartoons, a lot of them are, like, oh, hello. Let me explain this to my child. But yeah, so the Silver Surfer is like regretting that he decided not to hang with the Defenders any further. He comes back to say, hey, let's, I changed my mind. I want to hang with you guys and help the world. And the Silver Surfer's like, you were a dick to me. I'm going to beat the shit out of you. There's a fight.
Namor, you mean?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Namor, yeah. And Namor's pissed at Silver Surfer. There's a fight. And then the Silver Surfer's like, fine, be that way. I'm going to go to my private valley and I will never return. So the Surfer is referring to this event that happened where he had Namor is referring to this event that happened where he'd run into the Silver Surfer, and the Silver Surfer tried to kill him. And that eventually brings them, the Silver Surfer takes off to go back to his little happy valley. And Doctor Strange and Namor are puzzled by all of this and decide that they need to figure it out. Let's go to this happy valley and figure out what the Silver Surfer is talking about and why he's behaving so strangely. And weirdly, Doctor Strange, and again, this is one of those, because it's in the script moments, Doctor Strange goes, hang on, Namor, before we go and check out why the Silver Surfer is behaving that way, let's go get the Hulk and bring him with us. Because he's so reliable, let's do that.
And I love the fact, now the Hulk can leap everywhere, and that's how he travels. And yet the script called for the Hulk to wear Doctor Strange's cape of levitation.
This was great. Well, it's not only, for those of you who aren't reading along, shame on you, because it's not only the Hulk wearing Doctor Strange's cloak of levitation, but as a result, Doctor Strange is riding on the Hulk's shoulders.
Yep.
And if that isn't the greatest single panel of a Marvel comic ever drawn, I don't know what is.
Yeah, there's a panel with Namor and Hulk and Strange landing in the Happy Valley, and of course the inhabitants are scattering in fear. And here's Hulk with Doctor Strange's cape fluttering out behind him, and Doctor Strange like riding him like they're playing Marco Polo in the swimming pool.
Anyway, so we get to the Happy Valley, and it turns out to be occupied by a race of what appear to be sort of Sasquatchy type creatures. Only it turns out that they're aliens. They've been manipulating the Silver Surfer. He thinks that they're his friends, but in actuality, they're disguised as these Sasquatchy type creatures, and instead they are Kalizuma and his warrior wizards.
Yup.
Which definitely sounds like something Stan came up with. But in any case,
if our buddies Scott Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill are listening, and I'm sure at least Cargill is, that's who you need to use for Doctor Strange too.
Yes.
Okay.
And I will say that if there is a better Hulk line in these 6 issues than this one, I don't know what it is. Hulk says, "So monkeys are not really monkeys, huh? Hulk told you they were bad. Hulk could tell."
And he was right. He was right.
Of course he was right, but nobody listens to the Hulk.
Oh, man.
Oh, and by the way, Namor's response to that is, "I'll give you a written apology, Hulk, after this is over." Oh, God. I just loved that line.
Yeah, I did too. That was a standout for me.
Hulk told you they were bad. Oh.
I've had my 9-year-old tell me similar things like that.
Exactly.
Englehart, the writing now, it seems corny. But you're right. He was younger. He was hipper. And he really, really understood the character of the Hulk. Right. Just from the go, from issue number 1, he was nailing what makes the Hulk the Hulk.
Right.
So.
Oh, and actually, like to rush ahead a little bit and speak to that because it's so pertinent. It picks up where it left off in issue 3. The Silver Surfer is sort of still in this issue, sort of teaming up with them, and they're making a plan to go and face. I don't even remember now who they're facing. They're going on to travel through another dimension.
Yeah, they're going
to try to get the Silver Surfer to be freed from the barrier that prevents him from leaving Earth.
Right.
And Namor's going to go with them, because a journey to another world intrigues me. And Doctor Strange turns to Hulk and says, "And you, Hulk, will you come with us?" And the Hulk yells, "No!" And then this is great. And by the way, now we remember the nickname he has throughout the series for Doctor Strange. Hulk will not do anything anymore if dumb magician wants him to. When Hulk is with others, they try to order him around, and Hulk hates that. So Hulk is leaving, and if magician tries to stop him, Hulk will smash, of course. But then the Silver Surfer calls him his friend. Hulk says almost no one calls Hulk friend. Hulk will go with you, Silver One. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, Doctor Strange is a dick, but maybe Namor and the Silver Surfer aren't that bad. But there are so many times when Hulk calls him dumb magician.
And Doctor Strange doesn't learn his lesson because then on the next page, Namor has to replenish himself with water. So he jumps in the snow and he makes some Atlantean snow angels. And then they're ready to go. And, Hulk tells him, "Hurry up, fish man. Hulk wants to go with friend," meaning Silver Surfer.
Right.
Doctor Strange hasn't learned his lesson, says to Namor, "Don't mind the brute, Namor. We shall leave when you're ready."
When you're ready. Just to be a dick. Just to be a dick. Ignore him. We'll leave when you're ready, meaning when I'm good and ready.
And says this while he's within punching distance of the Hulk.
Anyway. All right, so then we go and we meet Barbara Norris. And you have the info, I'm sure, because you're you. So she's been left behind by the story that we just talked about. In fact, in Hulk 126, trapped.
And who left her behind?
Doctor Strange.
Yeah, he abandons. Okay, for those of you who did not read the 3 issues we talked about earlier, she was basically a cultist, one of the cult members that worshiped the Undying Ones, and she turned against the cult and helped helped Hulk and Strange. And how does Doctor Strange thank her? He leaves her stranded in this alien dimension with the Undying Ones.
Yeah. It's like, well, and why? Because as our refrain, Doctor Strange is a dick. So as much as I love Doctor Strange, he is a dick. So he left her there, and basically the net result of this whole thing is that they free her, and they're trying to sort of get and then she's being they're all sucked down by some weird maelstrom, or attempted to, and most of the issue then becomes them trying to resist, not being sucked into this maelstrom. It's all pretty cool artwork. They're potentially lured by the images of the women that they love to go back and get trapped back inside those same poles. Then the nameless ones appear, and in fact, it was a 2-headed thing before, but now it's a 3-headed thing, and the 3rd head is Barbara Norris's head.
Yep.
So she's been sort of merged with them, and she's evil, sort of pseudo-evil. She's been manipulated mainly because Doctor Strange left her trapped in this dimension for so long that her psyche has been torn apart. And when they finally eventually break her free, the Silver Surfer is, of course, still trapped in the Earth dimension.
Right.
Her mind has been completely torn apart. She's basically insane.
Yep.
Which leads into issue 4.
Yep. And Doctor Strange, very telling in the very last panel. This entire venture has been a disaster.
But he goes on. This is thought balloons. I wonder, in assuming the mantle of leadership for the Defenders, have I assumed too much? So a rare moment of introspection for the arrogant Doctor Strange.
Yep.
But I sort of rushed through the plot of that because I know that you and I both want to spend some time talking about issue 4.
Oh, absolutely. This is a key issue. It's a key Marvel Comics issue if you're a Marvel Comics fan. It sets up some seeds that later on will become what was really Marvel's first epic, their first really big crossover, something called the Avengers Defenders War, which we'll get to in later issues, later podcasts. Yep. But those seeds are set up here. But also, it's notable in Marvel history for being the debut, of course, of the Valkyrie.
Yep. Yeah, and it's funny, Brian, before I reread this, and I don't want to jump to it, but before I reread this, I'd forgotten how important, in a weird way, and important as far as like a keystone element to this story arc, the Black Knight is.
Oh, yeah.
I'd really forgotten that. So those of you who are unfamiliar, the Black Knight is a guy named Dane Whitman, who, and again, I didn't go back and study again the history, but at some point he wields Excalibur, but at this point he rides a winged horse, a Pegasus, called, is it Aragorn?
Aragorn, yep. Just like
probably named after the character from Lord of the Rings. And he wields an ebony blade, which is essentially a soul sword, something right out of Elric, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, absolutely.
So those are the key elements, and the Black Knight, is intrinsically tied to the King Arthur and Knights of the Round Table mythology, which is why we open in the British Isles with the Hulk holding Barbara Norris unconscious in his arms, and he says, "Get back, stupid magician hurt Barbara, but he won't do it again. Hulk has girl now, and he will save her."
Yep. And he goes on. Hulk has finally had enough of Doctor Strange's bullshit. Strange tries to talk him down from the ledge, so to speak.
Which is weird because Strange, this is, I think, the very first time we see Strange actually trying to reason with the Hulk. But go ahead.
Yeah. And Hulk's having none of it. He says, "You use big words to confuse Hulk. Hulk just knows he hates you. You tell him what to do. You don't thank him when he does good. Stupid magician." And then he bounds away with Barbara.
Yep. And again, as usual, we are on the side of the Hulk.
But what's very telling, on that same page, you start to see, and it's a slow progression, but you start to see the genesis of Doctor Strange taking a step back from himself and looking at how he interacts with people. He says to Submariner, he says, "Namor, though I could have done only what I did, would do it again in the same circumstances, I cannot hold myself blameless for this."
Right.
So he's starting to see, hey, you know what? Maybe I am sort of a dick.
Right. And then he actually asks Namor to decide what to do next, which is really unusual.
Right.
Yeah. So they go in to try to figure out what's going on. Let's see. In the castle.
Right.
And there is a brazier burning. And for some reason, they have stumbled into a situation where they are up against the Enchantress.
Yep.
And I find it, I just thought this was so great, that we, that all it sets up the idea that Defender stories can be anything.
Yep. Last issue they're fighting Cthulhu. This issue they're in Asgard. I mean, it's just It's all over the place.
Right. So we have, we have the Enchantress. We have
the Executioner.
That's the Executioner. who appears here, and they fight the Executioner and his men, and Doctor Strange and Namor are overpowered, and they're thrown in a cell, and who's in the cell but Bruce Banner?
That's
no
right.
longer the Hulk, and Barbara Norris, whose mind is still completely shattered. And who's in the next cell?
The Black Knight and the Enchantress.
Exactly. So do you want to explain? Because I think this is so cool for me as a total geek, because it's like, then we get the story of how the Black Knight and the Enchantress came to be in the cell.
Right. It goes back to, and again, this is back when continuity actually fucking mattered in the
Right.
Marvel Universe. It goes back to Avengers issue number 83, where the Executioner basically dumped the Enchantress, and which led into Avengers 100, where basically she was captured by Zeus, and the Black Knight helped her escape, and then the two of them basically get captured by the Executioner and thrown in the cell. Well,
she seduces Black Knight.
Right. I was trying to think of how to phrase it.
Yeah, I mean, she basically seduces him, and I think there's some magical inducement involved there as well, although I'm not sure.
Although,
And,
this now, and I know this is, I know I shouldn't say this. If we're going to get in trouble, we both know it'll be me that gets us in trouble on this show. But I don't know that much magic was involved with the Enchantress. I mean, even when I was a kid, any appearance of the Enchantress, I'd be like, why does she have to kiss these people to seduce them? I mean, look at her. I'd do whatever the hell she says.
Well, men are the weaker of the species, that's for sure.
Yes, we are.
And I think Dane Whitman, is certainly. Let's say he was a guy searching for direction, and she gave it to him.
Yes, she did.
So basically, hey, Dane Whitman. Well, this is the thing that I never understand. I mean, she's this all-powerful sorceress. She is called the Enchantress, and yet somehow the Executioner has sworn his allegiance to this other magical queen, Cassiolena.
Right.
And the Enchantress is like, essentially, I need another champion. But again, this is the 70s, so even though she's incredibly powerful as a sorceress, both of these women need male champion warriors to come and fight for them. But that's what happens. They pit the Black Knight and the Enchantress against each other. Now the Enchantress and the Black Knight are imprisoned by them, by Cassiolena and the Executioner. And basically, at some point previously, and Brian, you may have written these down in your notes, the Enchantress had summoned the Valkyrie, but essentially, the Valkyrie is not an actual person, according to this version of the story. She's sort of an avatar in some weird way.
Right.
This creation out of the Enchantress's mind. But she needs a host body. She needs a physical form to manifest.
Right.
And
If we have listeners who follow Thor, who not the movie but the comic books,
right?
It's sort of you'll remember first Thor took the form of Donald Blake. He would possess Donald Blake's body. Later on, it was Beta Ray Bill, and now it's Jane Foster. Valkyrie, very much the same sort of entity, but where Thor was the spawn of Odin, Valkyrie is a creation of the Enchantress. Her original appearance was actually, and you called it, yes, I have it here in my notes. It was Hulk, issue number 142. She took the form of a woman named Samantha Parrington. Now, we only saw Samantha that one issue of the Hulk. Valkyrie in the Marvel Universe from Defenders 4 going forward is, in fact, Barbara Norris.
Right.
And it happens in this issue.
And you know what? I'm actually super excited for the appearance of Valkyrie in Thor Ragnarok, the new film. It's obviously completely different character played by Tessa Thompson. I'm sure that there are half a dozen fanboys out there who were pissed off because they cast a black actress to play Valkyrie, and it's clearly not the same character. It's not Barbara Norris. It doesn't have all the baggage of the origin stories here. But suffice to say, Barbara Norris wasn't the first Valkyrie either.
Right.
They're clearly not doing... They're using the Valkyrie, I think, as a Valkyrie from Norse mythology, which I'm just as much in love with as I am with this particular character. That said, I would love to see this version show up in the TV series of the Defenders at some point.
I would too.
Because I do love this version of the character. And so, and I think that this is when it sticks. Because you have an origin of a character, and she becomes, and we'll talk about this, she becomes an incredibly interesting character. So, suffice to say, the Enchantress whips up this, avatar, manifests this avatar of this thing called Valkyrie, and merges it with Barbara Norris. And thus, even though she's in Barbara Norris's body and she's the Valkyrie, Barbara Norris's insane mind, her sort of fractured psyche, is sublimated, and the consciousness of the Valkyrie, takes supremacy here, and breaks them out. And go ahead, there you go.
Yeah, and that's it. The Valkyrie is reborn, and she gets almost a full splash page, beautifully drawn, and like I said, it is a key Marvel moment. I don't know that it gets as much play as things like X-Men 137, Death of Phoenix, or Daredevil 181, but it's a key Marvel issue.
Yeah, for us especially, for people who loved this series, and the character appeared in many other Marvel Comics series and appearances. I've always been intrigued by tracking down how some of these characters were disseminated into other storylines.
Right.
But here is the moment where it's cool. So here you've got her, and she breaks them out. They team up. They combat the wizard
and the executioner and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have that, and go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Then the Enchantress, after Executioner has put her through all this, she decides to leave with him.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Because that's her character. She always wanted the bad boy.
Right.
Dane Whitman was the good guy who was, weak enough to follow her. But she always wanted the bad boy, who was the executioner. She's like, okay, you helped me, Dane Whitman, but I'm going to leave.
Right. But she gives him a parting gift. She gives him one last kiss.
Yeah.
And turns him to stone, which becomes a major plot point. Now, as I said, it sets up the Avengers-Defenders War, which was one of Marvel's first big crossovers. Right. But Black Knight being stone, that runs through Spider-Man. It runs through the Avengers. It runs through Thor. It comes back and runs through the Defenders again. That was an ongoing plot line in the 70s. It all took place here.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I actually loved the character. I always loved that Dane Whitman character. But yeah, so it's like a throwaway thing here where she turns him to stone. But it's this thing Englehart did that everyone probably was like, well, how do we unfuck that?
Right.
And so it continued. As you said earlier, the unfucking of things. Yeah, so she turns him to stone, and then the Enchantress takes off, leaving Valkyrie behind.
Right. But Valkyrie gets a winged horse out of it because remember, Black Knight had this winged horse, Aragorn.
Right. And an ebony blade. She gets a winged horse and an ebony blade.
Yeah. Now, there is one thing, before we jump on to issue 5, one thing I wanted to point out. Again, it's the 70s, people, so it may seem corny now dialogue-wise. But there's one panel It's a scene between Valkyrie and Namor, the Submariner, that if you rewrote the dialogue to sound like now, it could be any conversation on Twitter. Basically, this is Namor becoming woke to feminism is what it is. Doctor Strange is trying to turn Black Knight back to flesh, and he can't do it. And Valkyrie says, "Perhaps I can help. I was born of the Enchantress's mind. I may be able to counter her." And Namor says, "You? But it is said that you hate men.
Right.
Why should you hate us?" And she says, "I do not hate men, Submariner. I merely know I'm as good as they are."
Right.
And it's corny now, but you have to remember, this was the early 70s.
Right.
Chris, we weren't getting that shit on Saturday morning cartoons. We weren't getting it anywhere but the pages of Marvel Comics.
Right. And it's really interesting because that's clearly the topic we're going to have over the next issue or so. Because the feminism of Valkyrie, and as a writer, what Englehart did is basically he created this character who is a woman warrior, where Barbara Norris's shattered psyche is sublimated, and the Valkyrie was created by the Enchantress to be a woman warrior, and somehow the result of that is she is the ultimate feminist.
Right.
And weirdly, that allows Englehart to also show Doctor Strange and Namor as total chauvinist bastards.
Yeah, exactly. But not Hulk. Not Hulk.
Right, exactly. Not Hulk.
Well, I think Steve Buscema deserves props here, too. You think back to all the female characters of the 70s that we grew up reading. Red Sonja, she had the infamous chainmail bikini. She-Hulk, she's running around in basically a ripped white top. Ms. Marvel, Carol Danvers, before she became Captain Marvel, she was Ms. Marvel. The tightest little pair of Daisy Duke short shorts you've ever seen. But for Valkyrie, and I guess Steve Buscema, according to my research, he's the one that came up with character design. This character that embodied feminism. He didn't objectify her. He didn't draw her in a sexy costume. I mean, she's dressed like a warrior.
Well, wait a second now. I get what you're saying, and you're not wrong, but she does have giant armored breasts.
Well, she does,
and no pants. So she does have the bare legs, but I agree. What I agree with is, for the 70s,
right,
the idea that she's clad in what their view at the time would have been as a warrior is a big deal.
Right. Yes, we notice the giant armored breasts now,
right, for
a different reason. But
right, yeah.
But for when you look at all the other characters of the 70s, I stand by. Valkyrie was the least objectified of any female comic character I can think of.
Right, of that era, yeah.
Yeah, of that era.
Yeah.
And I think it's a nice touch.
Yeah.
I think they knew right away they had something here.
Well, I like when she says, she says, "I think I'll come along with you, Defenders," basically. And Namor's like, "Hang on now. We don't have any members. We fought for common causes." And I think this is really important. We fought for common causes. This is not the Avengers. And Strange says, "Further, with all due modesty, we are three of the most powerful people in the world." And that emphasis on "are" is there in bold. We are three of the most powerful people in the world. What could we possibly need you for?
And then the last panel.
Right.
Well, for one thing, there's the Omegatron, and you see the countdown. There are 0 seconds left on Yandroth's machine.
And I think it's important to note to people listening that Brian's comment, "Well, for one thing, there's the Omegatron," that's not Brian commenting. That's actually the caption that Englehart has put in as a response to Doctor Strange's douchey comment. Englehart's like, hang on a second, Doctor Strange. You probably need her for this. But again, I think it's important to note here that without Valkyrie, you don't have a team.
Right.
So you they always remain the sort of quote-unquote non-team. But Valkyrie here is clearly the missing piece that makes this core familial team come together.
Absolutely.
And I think Engelhart's doing that on purpose when Namor says, like, the Defenders have no members, we've only fought for a common cause. And it's Valkyrie's presence that sort of completes this circle.
Absolutely. And, we're getting way ahead of ourselves, but, we should note, 100 issues later in the series, when Strange and Hulk and Namor are no longer members, Valkyrie is still there. She becomes, in fact, the leader of the Defenders. So, yeah, she is, I would argue, her and Nighthawk both are the heart of the book. But we'll get to Nighthawk later when he appears.
And I think, and also we're going on at length here, so I don't want to take too much time, although this next issue is super important.
It is.
But do you want to talk about the opening? Because I think the opening is key.
Well, yeah, the opening, it's again, starts with a beautiful splash page. Valkyrie, just walking down the street in New York City, wondering who she is. It's an identity crisis. Keep in mind, she's this Asgardian warrior whose spirit has been grafted to the body of this mortal woman, Barbara Norris. And she's walking down the street in Greenwich Village with her giant boob armor and her sword, turning heads. And, she's confused about who she is. Basically she's a woman that is sprung in full grown, to quote the comic, springing full grown into existence. I have no childhood, no habits, no feel for dealing with others. And the only three people I know here are the Defenders, who can't be bothered with me. Even Doctor Strange, though allowing me to live in his house, feels I should move on, choose a course of action. This is a woman who's frightened, but she's a warrior. She's not going to back down, but she has no clue what her identity is or what she should do next.
Right. She's also afraid of what will happen because she knows that the woman whose body she's inhabiting is insane. And that consciousness might try to come back and take over at some point.
Right.
Then we get into, again, this great moment where she's attacked in because she's living in Doctor Strange's home, she's attacked by these cultists.
Who also think Doctor Strange is a dick.
Yeah. And then when she fights, no man attacks the Valkyrie with impunity. No man, very, very emphasized. And then we keep getting that. So Doctor Strange shows up, and helps her. And she says, basically, I should have known it was going to be you. Strange is basically says, you seem displeased to see me, girl. And then he goes on. But Valkyrie says, the Valkyrie needs no help from you or any other man, Stephen Strange. I could have beaten them by myself. And then Strange is talking about how she needs friends, which of course is true. Then they go back to Strange's home and they walk in and they have the conversation that they're having basically is Valkyrie saying, look, your girlfriend wants me out of here.
Right. And Clea is shooting her, the daggers with her eyes.
Exactly.
There's no dialogue, but it's drawn perfectly.
Yeah.
Strange, his dialogue, he's still condescending. He's still an ass, but you get a sense he's genuinely trying. He's genuinely trying to befriend this young woman.
Yep. Yeah. And he wants her to go out and find Namor and the Hulk and essentially win them over.
Right. And she does make a friend in the process. Submariner's cousin, Namorita, she befriends her, which is important to this issue.
Right.
Because Namor and Hulk both blink out of existence. And it's, we find out later it's because Yandroth has teleported them to his machine. But it's Valkyrie and Namorita who, again, the concept of the Defenders, it's a non-team. Anybody can be a member. Right. Suddenly the book is these two female characters,
right,
going off to save the menfolk.
Right, exactly. Valkyrie and Namorita go off and to find Omegatron because Doctor Strange fucked up and didn't do it. Didn't handle it. So that they go off as the heroes of the story.
Right.
Yeah. And fight. Versions of the Hulk and Namor, and again to get through. But they are. Until Hulk and Namor are sort of revived, returned to themselves, Valkyrie and Namorita are the ones who are saving the day here.
Right. And, as we said on last week's show, all of the planet's entire nuclear arsenal will simultaneously explode when the Omegatron says Yandroth's name. And it's halfway through saying the name. It gets to Yandroth. And then Valkyrie cuts off its head. So, she's the one that stops it.
Yeah, she saves the world in that moment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
She saves us all from nuclear destruction.
Yeah. And they're all standing around, and she asks them. She says, "Do you still feel I'm useless, Defenders?"
Yep.
And it's actually unfortunate. Hulk picks that point to throw a tantrum.
Right.
Says, "Bah, girl wants to talk about group again. Hulk doesn't. Hulk is leaving. Hulk thinks girl is crazy." And, the Valkyrie is crushed. She says, "I'm sorry I asked." Yeah. But, Namor admits to her, "No, I don't feel about you the way I did." He comments on her bravery and her analytical mind, and he decides to accompany her back to New York because they have much to talk about.
Yeah, they have to talk about the formation of the Defenders as something more than just a bunch of people who keep, stumbling into each other in moments when the world is about to end.
Right.
So it's great. I mean, I think 4 and 5, that story of the Valkyrie and her becoming a part of the team, that's one of my favorite moments of the early run of this series. Then we get to this sort of the dangling participle of this collection, Defenders 6, which has the Silver Surfer returning. He talks about how he's been brooding and hiding for too long, which is basically the entire history of the Silver Surfer.
Right.
And that he's, sort of coming back to rejoin the world. And of course, what is he going to do? He's going to go back to visit Doctor Strange. And when he gets there, he finds that the block around Doctor Strange's sanctum is hidden inside this sort of psychedelic-looking cube of energy.
Right, which would be used again in the Defenders by Steve Gerber in a later issue, much more effectively, I think. I got to be honest, issue number 6 does not do it for me.
No, I agree. That's what I was saying. It's sort of like, it's this kind of like, well, I'd like to bring the Silver Surfer back. I've just done all this stuff that's really intricate and sort of important to the future of the story. And number 6 is just, even though it's written by Englehart, it reads like a fill-in.
Right. I agree. It does. There's just not much to the plot. The cultists from issue 5, the ones that attacked Valkyrie in the alley, they show up. They're now the main bad guys. They're led by, here's how forgettable the main villain is. I can't even remember his name. Oh, yes, Cyrus Black.
Yeah, but he also refers to himself as Cyrus Black, the Devil Incarnate.
Yeah.
If there's anything I should say, one of the things I love most about comic books from this era is the propensity of all characters, heroes and villains, to refer to themselves in the third person.
Right.
But yeah, it's good. It does have the distinction, though, of being the first issue where the non-team, is established sort of as a team with the base of Doctor Strange's sanctum, or the house,
Right.
which becomes the hub for the entire future of the series for as long as Strange is a member. And Valkyrie does say, we are the Defenders, and Namor says, I have told that girl not to view us as a team. But it's clear that he's fighting a losing battle to not be a team at this point.
Right. Yeah, there's a full page. Englehart, to his credit, he takes a page and a half of nobody fighting, no action. It's just dialogue. It's what Brian Bendis does with 22 pages. Englehart does it in a page and a half. Take notes, Brian. It's Strange and Namor and Valkyrie and Silver Surfer talking, and basically it's Surfer and Valkyrie meeting for the first time. But you're right. The seeds of the non-team. You see all the threads being tied together right there in that page and a half of dialogue. And the background is, of course, Doctor Strange's house, the Sanctum Sanctorum. I mispronounced that, didn't I?
No, I think you said it right.
I'm recording this in Pennsylvania. You say Santorum in this state, and it's like saying Candyman in the mirror 3 times. You're just a cloud of brimstone. But yeah, so I mean, the issue is notable for that, but otherwise, it's quick read. You skim through it. I don't know. I don't have much else to say about it. There's a gorgeous pinup on the last page of the team. And it even seems to announce that, yes, they are now a team. It says, here they are, the mightiest non-team ever assembled.
Yeah.
And it's all the members at that time, except for Namorita.
Right.
There's Valkyrie, there's Namor, there's Hulk, Strange, and of course the Silver Surfer.
Yeah, and the only other things I want to say about that issue are, it shows, I think it's the first time that the characters are calling her Val, which becomes her nickname.
Right.
And it shows that sort of level of comfort. It also has a couple panels where we're reminded that the stone statue that is actually the Black Knight is still in Doctor Strange's house. I'm surprised it wasn't like exercise equipment that Strange was hanging his cloak on.
It's a coat rack.
It is. Dane Whitman has become a coat rack. But it does sort of reinforce the idea that this is not forgotten. It's going to continue to reappear, and continue to be a part of the story. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
I agree. All right, cool. Next week, I guess we'll talk about what, issues 7 through 12?
Yeah, that's a good question. While we're talking, I'm going to grab it. We didn't address that, but I think it's important to let the readers know. Hang on. Let's see here.
All right. While Chris is doing that, let me remind you guys, if you'd like to advertise on the show, send us an email, Brian Keene, Keene, at live.com. Of course, we have lots of advertisers on our individual podcasts. My own, The Horror Show with Brian Keene, and Chris's Three Guys with Beards. This is a new show. We certainly don't have the numbers of those other shows, so we can work out a good deal for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you back?
It's always we're always open to discussion. We are doing this for our own entertainment.
That's right.
As I said,
it's keeping us sane.
But it is keeping us sane. All right, so I opened up the second volume of Marvel Masterworks Defenders because, interestingly, it also includes Giant Size number 1 and the Avengers numbers 115 to 118. Brian.
Okay.
Because
now, where do they fall in chronological?
Well, this includes the Avengers Defenders War.
Okay.
And so, wow. Okay. So next week, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think we're probably going to talk about Defenders 7 through 10.
Okay.
And Avengers 116 or 115, a little bit of 115 through 118. So we're going to cover the Avengers Defenders War and the issue or two leading up to it.
Okay,
so,
and again, folks, if you want to read along, those are collected in Marvel Masterworks. They're collected in the Essential Defenders They're also available on Marvel Unlimited and I believe Comixology as well.
There we go.
So, yep.
All right.
All right. Well, one more time, folks. Defenders Dialogue, brought to you by the Project Entertainment Network. It's available on iTunes, Android, iHeartRadio, Roku, Stitcher, Google Play Music, and all other platforms. Our engineer is Tommy Clark. Please check out Tommy's podcast, The Necrocasticon, right here on the Project Entertainment Network as well. Chris, you got anything else?
Only Excelsior!
True believers. See you next week, folks.
The Necrocasticon, the podcast that blends horror and heavy metal properties with a common connection. Brought to you by hosts Token Tom Clock, Max Axe, Smoking Walt Hades, and Asriel Mordecai. Featuring interviews and more with the stars of metal and horror. The Necrocasticon, Mondays on Project Entertainment Network.
This has been an exclusive presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.